What's up, guys, and welcome to a special Flannelverse edition of GameScript. We're going to be breaking down the Super Bowl and building some DraftKings Showdown lineups right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching GameScript. We're looking at the Super Bowl in this edition, and I am joined by a very special guest from Flannelverse. Neil Orfield has joined me today to break down the game and build some DraftKings Showdown lineups. What's going on, Neil?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Looking forward to a repeat Super Bowl. As I was just telling you, kind of paying attention to my NBA DFS lineups a little bit, but excited to get into this one. Crazy how it felt like we had so much time between football, and now it's like, oh, it's actually coming up pretty soon here. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like the whole season has flown by for me, at least with football this year. I had a lot of good. A lot of good shows this season. And Neil, you started your YouTube channel this season, or did you started it during best ball? I know that. Like, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I started. I actually don't know what month I started. So I was let go from my old job last January. So 13 months ago today, as of when we're recording this. And then I think I waited like a month before I really launched my YouTube channel and started, doing streams pretty consistently, pretty quickly, doing a lot of best ball streams. And then I've also been doing Showdown DFS content, some NBA content on my channel also. So it's been about 11 months now, I think.
Nice. And it's called Flannelverse. Is that where they can find
Yep.
you?
Awesome.
Awesome.
The YouTube channel is called Flannelverse. I'm Player Q DFS on Twitter, and you can find the link there also.
Nice. So most of my audience are Showdown fans. Like, most of my content is Showdown oriented. Neil is one of the best Showdown players in the game, and definitely happy to have him on here. So you're going to want to check out his channel as well and subscribe over there if you're not already. And make sure to subscribe to this channel too. I'm looking to get to about 1,800 subscribers. I was hoping to get there by the end of the Super Bowl, and I think we're relatively close. I think I'm under 100 left to get there, but I think we should get a nice spike with the Super Bowl coming up this week. Make sure to hit that like button as well. Looking for about 40 likes to put out my favorite picks in the comment section a little bit later on when we get closer to lock. And we're breaking down the Super Bowl here. We got the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles. We're looking at a 49.5 point total with Kansas City as 1.5 point favorites in this one. Neil, do you want to give us a breakdown of what you're thinking of this game and how you think the big picture is this week?
Yeah, I know this is called the game script. I would not say that my strength is predicting the game script here. If I had to guess, I think the Chiefs win this. I think they cover the 1.5 spread. I just think that with the bright lights on, like, who do you trust more than the Chiefs? I think they've got this one. And Jalen Hurts, sometimes looks great out there, and other times just looks a little bit like a deer in headlights to me. Like, looks like he gets a little bit frazzled at times. So I take the Chiefs in this one.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that. I'm kind of taking the opposite side. I'm taking the Eagles in this one. I think that the Chiefs have mainly been skating by throughout the season. They had some very close wins this season. I think all their games were within 1 point or something ridiculous this year, and a lot of those games were kind of fluky. Not to take anything away from the Chiefs, but I do think that when they're facing a much tougher defense than they're used to, and the Eagles number 1 ranked defense in the league, and the Eagles actually have an offense that can attack the Chiefs as well. I do think that the Eagles have a pretty good chance of winning this, but like Neil said, when you're dealing with a big game situation like this, the Chiefs like rarely fail in this situation. So it's very tough to bet against the Chiefs, but we'll build some lineups to kind of take both sides of this situation because I do think that it could go either way. Obviously, with the spread being 1.5 points, the last time they faced off in the Super Bowl was a 3-point game in that one. So, expect it to be very close, and it could go either way. Honestly, what do you think about that, Neil?
Yeah, I also kind of think it's going to be a lower scoring game. Like I'm totally with you that could go many different directions. I feel like this is one of the more wide open type of games. Like there are some games this year that I think we've watched and it's been like, oh, this game is just going to go off. They're going to put up 60 points in this game, and other games where it feels like that's impossible. This is one where honestly, it's one of the more unpredictable game environments to me, where could be really low scoring because both these defenses are really strong, but the offenses are really strong also. So I'd say one of the harder games to predict the actual outcome, which I don't really put a ton of effort into trying to predict the outcome for Showdown. I try to predict, specific players that'll do well, try to find the right correlations, but that's something I spend a ton of time doing, and particularly in a game like this where it's wide open in my opinion, with these offenses being so good and the defense is being so good. But we'll do our best to predict what's going to happen and make some lineups that'll work for that outcome.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I like about having you on this show, because you have a different style than me when it comes to building the lineups. I kind of like to go through and try to think through the game script and try to come up with matchup weaknesses and whatnot, and try to figure out which lower owned guys we might be able to put in the captain spot. But you generally you're a mass multi entry guy. And how do you usually take an approach to like a showdown slate with that style of play?
Yeah, I mean, I spread out my style of play a good amount on most slates. It'll change every slate, so I can't really say oh, this is exactly how I play, because every slate kind of gives you a different puzzle to try to solve. On this slate in particular, I would say I'm probably going to oftentimes I will, if I'm playing 150 lineups, and I use an optimizer rather than a Sims tool. I know a lot of people like to use a Sims tool. I also hand build some lineups depending on if I'm in higher stakes contests, I'll hand build it. But in an optimizer, I'll usually set 20% cap on captain exposure and get to, that gives you at least 5 different captains if you're putting a 20% cap. But often I'll have 18 different captains represented if the slate is right across all of my lineups. And they really give you different types of builds. If you set up an optimizer in certain ways, and you set it up, if you spread out your captain exposure, like a lineup where you have, I'm trying to think of a good example, maybe Justin Watson at captain is going to look a lot different than a lineup where you have Saquon Barkley at captain, because you're spending a lot less in that captain spot. So the rest of your lineup is going to look very different. So it's just kind of a natural way to spread out your portfolio a little bit, just by making sure you are spreading out your captains. Now, if all of your captains are like AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, if you're only playing 5 and those are your 5, you're spending up in all of those, and you might end up with a lot of the same players across your lineups, but they'll still look somewhat different for me, because I'll also set rules for if I have Patrick Mahomes at captain, I'm going to require at least 2 pass catchers from the Chiefs, most likely in the flex spots. So those are automatically going to look different, most likely, from my lineups that have even Travis Kelce in the captain spot. You're probably not going to end up on all the same players, because if I have Travis Kelce in the captain spot, I'd prefer not to have many other Chiefs pass catchers throughout the rest of the lineup. So kind of I naturally spread out what my lineups look like, but it's not like I'm not taking player stands. I'll also I give boosts in projections for players that I think, okay, the field is only playing 15% of this player. I want to get to 30%. I'll just give a boost to the projection to make sure I get to at least 30% of that player. So I'm not completely just I'll throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. I do take some stands in terms of I like this player better in the field, I'm going to force myself to have a little bit more, or sometimes a lot more than what the field is getting. And the same thing at captain. But it really is kind of slate dependent for me which stands I end up taking, and based on kind of what the field is doing a lot of the time too.
Yeah, for sure. I take that approach too, especially when I'm doing more lineups than normal. I think for this Super Bowl, I'm probably going to be doing the most lineups that I've done throughout the season, just because it's the last DFS that I'm going to be playing, at least until I start digging into some of these best ball contests, which have already started. By the way, we got the big board up on Underdog. You can use the promo code SEEK over there for a 50% deposit match up to $1,000 on your first deposit. And Neil, let's take a look at this player pool and see what we like and what we're seeing here. First off, obviously, Saquon Barkley. The Chiefs have been really good against the run this season, but they've been vulnerable in the last few games versus the run, and they got Saquon Barkley. A big talking point I've heard with Warren Sharp recently is that Steve Spagnuolo has been really good against these elite running backs in these Super Bowl games. He was able to stop Christian McCaffrey last year, and the prior year against the Eagles, they were able to slow down the run game that year. But this is Saquon Barkley, not Miles Sanders, that we're talking about. And what are your thoughts here on Saquon Barkley this week?
Yeah, I mean, it really is going to depend on the ownership, obviously, and Saquon. Like, you can also split up the player into, like, do you like Saquon at captain? Do you like him in the flex? Saquon's volume is just so good, and he's so good that, like, obviously in a 150 set, I guess I shouldn't say obviously, but for me, the way I play, I'm not going to be fading Saquon Barkley in a 150 set. I'm going to have a ton of Saquon Barkley, but then where I play him kind of depends on the ownership. And as of right now, I'm seeing ownership kind of all over the place on Saquon. Excuse me, sorry, I'm getting over a cold here.
Oh, you're good.
I'm seeing him as low as 12% in the captain in some places, and as high as like 25%. And that makes a massive difference. Do I want to play him if he's going to be in the captain spot? If he's going to be 12%, yeah, I love Saquon at that number. I'd want to be certainly over 12%. I mean, actually, for the most part, the consensus seems to be like below 15% on Saquon. And I think I take an overweight stance there on Saquon. Now, I think you're right. Like, the Chiefs are really good at shutting down, like deciding what they want to stop. And my guess would be that they're going to let's force Jalen Hurts to beat us is probably what they're going to do. I was just reading some stats today. I think it was from Ryan Heath at Fantasy Points about just how Saquon yards per carry with 6 men in the box, 6.2, 7 men in the box, 6.7, 8 men, 3.98 or more, 3.93. So way worse. And that's obviously kind of goes without saying. That's going to be the case for any running back. The more you load the box, the fewer yards are going to get per run. Still did well in terms of explosive run rate, but I would guess the Chiefs are going to really focus on stopping Saquon, forcing Jalen Hurts to beat them. Still, he's going to get 20, 25 touches in this game, I think, like regardless of game script, probably. So yeah, if he does come in at 12% captain ownership, I'm going to be above that number. I think he looks like a great play, even with his price being the most on the slate by kind of a wide margin. I think I like him quite a bit at 12, 14, 15% captain. I'd want to be overweight there. How about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a great discount on ownership if you can get Saquon Barkley at around 12%. I think he's got the highest, obviously the highest floor on the slate. I think he's probably got a more than 14% chance of being obviously the highest raw points on the slate. And I was watching an interview with him a couple weeks ago, leading into the Washington Commanders game, where he was talking about, like how he loves it when the box is stacked against him, because all he has to do is get past that first line of defense and they don't have anyone in the secondary to stop him. And, then he went and he busted out like that 60-yard touchdown on like one of the first plays of the game. Like, and you just look at all these touchdowns that like these long runs that he's had: 60 yards, 78 yards, 68 yards, 72 yards. It just goes on and on throughout the season, just busting out these ridiculous runs. And I do think that, once he gets past that, that first line of defense on the Chiefs, which is definitely possible with that offensive line of the Eagles, that he could definitely, bust through at least one of these long runs, which could set him up as the highest scorer on the slate, which sets him up perfectly for, like what we're kind of going for here.
Yeah, no, he certainly could. That's funny that he likes when the box is loaded. And to your point about the long runs, I mean, this was another part of Fantasy Points Day to put out this tweet that that Ryan Heath cited. So his explosive run rate, which is 15 plus yards in the run or more, versus the number of defenders in the box. With 6 in the box, 7.2% of his runs go for 15 yards or more. 7 in the box, 6.7%. So a little bit of a dip there. 8 or more, 6.8%. So it's like it's really not even that much fewer in terms of much of a lower rate in terms of his explosive run rate when teams do load the box. Obviously, they stop him a lot more frequently, so his yards per carry come down significantly, but he still has that ability to break it off with the box loaded there. So that's funny that he has noted that just doesn't really matter. He can do it against any number of defenders in the box.
Yeah, and last year, last week or 2 weeks ago against the Commanders, he was able to do that, with a banged up offensive line. We're talking about Dickerson was filling in for Cam Jurgens as the starting center. So, when we went into that game, I'm an Eagles fan. So when we went into that game, like, I was worried about that offensive line and, like, what could potentially happen with, like shifting those guys around. But Dickerson had played, center in college, and he did a good job. And eventually, like, he hurt his knees, and Jurgens came into the game. He was an emergency backup, ended up coming in the game and doing a good job replacing Dickerson. But both those guys are banged up, which would be the only concern for Barkley that I would have, or the main concern that I would have, apart from Kansas City's defense. But Kansas City's defense has not been that great against the run lately. And it's like Neil said, it's like, if they focus on Barkley, then, and put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hand, then, Jalen Hurts has plenty of weapons. And, he's another guy with the potential to be a captain option for us. And he is also pretty low ownership. You want to talk about that, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, Hurts is an interesting one because he is such a great rushing quarterback. He puts up so many fantasy points on the ground. That always makes things a little bit more difficult for me to decide what I want to do with that quarterback. It's easier with a true like pocket passer. Even Mahomes, I wouldn't put in like the easiest category of, like, if you have Kirk Cousins, you put him in the captain spot, you want to have at least 2 pass catchers with him. Like, he's not going to put up any fantasy points on the ground. He's going to be fairly condensed. You want to have multiple pass catchers. Hurts is a little bit trickier from that standpoint, because it's possible that he is the optimal captain because he's scored 2 touchdowns on the brotherly shove, and maybe thrown for one, and maybe doesn't really bring anybody along with him. But he looks great regardless. Projected for, let's see, 13 to trying to find his ownership here. Yeah, around 13% everywhere around the industry at captain. Seems like a pretty strong number also. So I think this is probably a good slate for paying up. The trouble with paying up is just trying to find value on this slate is admittedly kind of tough. And obviously, if you're playing Hurts or Saquon at captain, you're going to need to find other players to play in the flex that you can be comfortable with, who are a little bit cheaper. And it's not the best slate for that, but I think we can probably find some players that we're comfortable with coming in with lower price tags. So yeah, I think he is going to look like a great captain. Also, you do have, somewhat reasonably priced pass catching options. Dallas Goedert 5,800, Devonta Smith 7,800. Obviously AJ Brown a little bit more expensive, so a little bit tougher there, but I think you can make it happen. And I think 13% still probably a number I'd like to be above if I can.
Yeah, Chiefs have been pretty good against the quarterback position too. They're allowing 16.6 DraftKings points a game, and Hurts is the worst quarterback in the league versus pressure. And if we have that situation with the center, the offensive line being weak there, expect Jalen Hurts to be under pressure in this one. He's also been holding on to the ball at a ridiculously long rate. I think one of the highest, if not the highest rate in the league. And, that's been getting him in some trouble. So if it does fall on, Jalen Hurts, they could struggle. And, all of this stuff, between these defenses being being good, having 2 weeks to prepare for each other. I'm kind of leaning towards the under. Neil, you said something about you thought it was going to be a lower scoring game as well. Are you thinking this hits the under as well?
Yeah, if I had to pick, I mean, we 48.5 total. Is that right?
I had
I would take
49, but yeah, 48 and a
Okay.
half, let's say.
Yep. Regardless, I think the under seems like a pretty good bet. Yeah, I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it also gives us an opportunity if we're going to hit lower scoring game. I think that puts more people in play to be the captain option, because if we're holding the studs at bay like Barkley and Hurts, it's going to give us an opportunity to look at some of these cheaper options. And I do have a couple cheaper options that we'll get into in a minute, who I like as potential captain options, who are seen as below 10% owned. A couple of them below, around 7% owned. So I do think that this is going to be a good slate for us, based on, picking and choosing some of these matchups where we can get a lot different with our captain option here.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm looking through some of the captains, and there are certainly some options that are coming in the single digits that could be good options also.
Nice. All right. So Patrick Mahomes is the next guy up. Patrick Mahomes, for the most part this season, was pretty bad, like under 20 DraftKings points throughout a majority of the season. But then his weapons started to get healthy, and Xavier Worthy started to come around towards the end of the season. And Travis Kelce, of course, like in the playoffs, he starts to turn things back on. And Mahomes, in the last 3 weeks, he's had 2 out of the last 3 weeks over 29 DraftKings points. And, he's just been, able to use these weapons. He's got Xavier Worthy, like I said, coming around. And then we got Hollywood Brown, who was hurt throughout the season. And he came towards the end of the season back onto the lineup or onto the lineup for the first time. In the preseason, they were talking, when we were building best ball lineups, they were talking about Hollywood Brown playing a major role on this team. He was going to be the focus of the offense pretty much. When he went out, Rashee Rice kind of picked that up, and he was doing great throughout the beginning of the season until he got hurt. And then Xavier Worthy, it was liftoff for him from there. But Patrick Mahomes against this defense, just a couple things that I don't like about this matchup against the Eagles defense. The Eagles are the number one defense versus quarterbacks throwing at or behind the line of scrimmage, which Patrick Mahomes does for about 30% of the time. So that's going to be rough for him, but they are also good at defending deep. They're a break, but they're a bend but don't break type of defense. So it's going to be difficult for them to get downfield against the Eagles. I think the weak spot in the Eagles defense is going to be Nakobe Dean being out. And so they're going to be, like maybe a Travis Kelce type of situation or something like that. But I don't think that they're going to be able to do their short passes as successfully, and they're not going to be able to really necessarily go deep, but maybe they take that strategy. But what are your thoughts here on Patrick Mahomes, Neil?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Mahomes in the captain spot in particular. Just looks like that is one of the easier fades to me. Now, I didn't play him on the last slate, the 2-game slate. I thought, man, he's $6,000. Mahomes getting the most ownership on the slate, and then he made me pay for it. He had a big game there, but like you said, he's been bad most of the year. This is a really tough spot. I'm expecting a low scoring game. Generally, in low scoring games, I think fading chalky quarterbacks is like the easiest thing to do, particularly chalky quarterbacks in the captain spot, because quarterbacks they don't rack up PPR points. So like while Travis Kelce can have a big game, even if the Chiefs only score 2 touchdowns, he can have 8 receptions in that game. That's 8 fantasy points. He gets more points for every yard. Quarterbacks really rely on scoring for their fantasy points. I mean, they can score some with yardage. If he throws for 300 yards, sure, he can have a big game without scoring a ton. But like if he throws for over 300 yards, they're probably also putting up points. So in a low scoring game, quarterbacks, particularly non-rushing quarterbacks, really have a tough time putting up a lot of fantasy points, because if you're not scoring a lot of fantasy points, you're probably also not getting a ton of yards. And quarterbacks that's how you score. Whereas every other position, you benefit from points per reception, you benefit from more points per yard. So Yeah, Mahomes to me, if he's going to be one of the chalkier captains on the slate, and currently he looks like he is the highest projected ownership at captain on the slate, at least depending where you look. Yeah, both places I'm looking right now, the highest projected ownership at captain seems like the easiest fade on the slate to me is Mahomes at captain. Now, obviously, he can make me pay for it. There's he just did the last time out, but that to me just stands out as a I don't really want to play a ton of Mahomes at captain.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's an easy fade for me too. I think there's some things in the matchup as well. The history versus Vic Fangio. I think a lot of people are looking at, oh, he's 8-0 versus Vic Fangio, but Vic Fangio was always playing with those crappy Denver teams. They had a great defense, but they didn't have a good offense, and so it was easy for the Chiefs to take advantage of that. But Mahomes has never thrown more than 2 touchdowns against a Vic Fangio defense. And on top of that, another note that I heard from a Warren Sharp podcast is that the typical Chiefs red zone offense was thrown at something around 68% touchdowns when they get to the red zone, but when they face off against Vic Fangio's defense, that goes down to about 30%. So they're already struggling in the red zone this year, but you add that on top of it, and it just does not paint a good picture for Mahomes so much as it does for Butker in this one.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just not feeling. I mean, and we have several other great options here. Like I don't think we need to be playing a ton of Mahomes.
Right.
So he's one that I actually think I would, if I set my cap at 20% and I got to 20% Mahomes, I would go out of my way to make sure I don't want to be over the field there. I think I want to be pretty significantly under the field there.
Yeah, he's also the highest projected, which I don't understand. But for me, like I'm on the same page as you. I think that he is going to be an easy way to get different this week.
Yeah, exactly. Just that there are so many other options that even if the median isn't quite as high, the upside is so much higher with other options. I'd rather just take the field there, and depending on where you look, there are some places that actually have other players projected a little bit higher than Mahomes. So yeah, I'm looking at different sources. Some of them have him as the highest projected player. Other places there are others that look a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's what brings me to AJ Brown. What we were talking about earlier with finding these captain options under 10%. AJ Brown is like the perfect captain option. He hasn't had a big week in a while. He actually had 21.6 DraftKings points last week against Washington, and that seemed like kind of a muted game for him, even though he had a relatively nice game. He has been very down this season, but there's been a few weeks where he's popped off. We've seen a 26 DraftKings points games out of him. A 28 was his ceiling this year, but he's definitely capable of putting up a monster game and being maybe a PPR guy that gets us a bunch of those PPR points and ends up being the highest score on the game at a discounted captain ownership. But what do you think there, Neil?
Yeah, AJ Brown, I like quite a bit. And I'm going back to the Ryan Heath article that I mentioned earlier. This seems like a spot where if the Chiefs really do focus on stopping Saquon, things could really open up for AJ Brown. And this is coming right from Ryan Heath's article. It says AJ Brown averaged an absurd 3.94 yards per route run against single high looks this year, trailing only Puka Nacua. Compared to when he faces two high, that's roughly a plus 77% boost to Brown's per route efficiency on routes with 8 or more defenders in the box, which I think could happen in this game more than usual. Brown has averaged an even more insane 5 yards per route run. Now, for people who don't look at stats often, anybody who's over like 2 yards per route run is elite. Like 5 is unheard of. So this could be a spot where the Chiefs really focus on stopping Saquon Barkley. AJ Brown could just absolutely feast in this spot. And the ownership doesn't look like it is that prohibitive. I'm seeing around 10% at captain, depending where you look on AJ Brown. That's a number that I would like to be above weight to the field on. I'm seeing other places 8% AJ Brown. So regardless of where you look, I think it looks fairly reasonable on AJ Brown. Has not had the best playoffs overall. He's been kind of a dud in some spots, but this could be a spot where he goes a little bit overlooked as a result. And I mean, if I could just flip Mahomes ownership with AJ Brown, I would love to do that. Just get to a lot more AJ Brown. So yeah, I think it looks great here.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing with the Chiefs, at least during the regular season, they were running, I believe, a top 10 rate of man coverage, and that's where they primarily focus on AJ Brown against man coverage. But with Hurts playing well against man coverage, I would imagine that they're probably going to take like less. Play less man coverage against them, and like figure it out from there. But AJ Brown, definitely in play this week at that cheap ownership in the captain. I think versus the Chiefs, slot receivers have done really well, and I do think that that's going to set us up for Devonta Smith as another potential captain option. He's another guy that could pop off against the Chiefs. The Super Bowl that they played a few years ago, obviously different teams, different coordinators and everything. But, Smith and A.J. Brown both scored around 20 points. I think that A.J. Brown was slightly higher than Devonta Smith in that game. But just kind of goes to show if you sleep on a guy like Smith, he has the talent to definitely pull out a like a captain worthy performance. What do you think on Devonta Smith here? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you for I thought it was telling me that you were muted, but no, I was muted. If you I love the call on Devonta Smith. Also looking at fantasy points again, schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game. They have a chart of which defenses allow the most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to different positions. So it's adjusting for how teams have done against other types of defenses, so kind of trying to adjust for the other defenses and offenses faced, and it is the best possible matchup for slot receivers, both on the entire season. The Chiefs have allowed the most schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game to slot receivers, and also it's an even bigger number over the past 5 weeks. And Smith in the most recent game, 63% routes, which is really high. Like rarely do you see a wide receiver run 100%. So 63%, really high slot percentage that Devonta Smith is running. It's a great matchup for slot receivers. A little bit of a price discount. So I love AJ Brown also, but Smith does come in at an easier price tag at 7,400 in the flex. And fairly reasonable ownership also at captain. Smith coming in at 6% ownership. Let's see, is it consistent here? Other play 4%. So I think that looks like another play where I'd rather fade Patrick Mahomes, get a little bit more of AJ Brown, get a little bit more of Devonta Smith. Just looks like they're going a little bit overlooked given how much upside they have. And like we've said, the Eagles might just need to throw more here just to be, because the Chiefs are such a good offense. Chiefs get ahead a little bit, they're going to be forced, and they've been able to run all year. Just they love to run. They prefer to run with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts all game. But this is not the matchup where that's necessarily going to be possible. I think that these are receivers that are capable of exploiting the defense if the defense forces them to throw.
Yeah, for sure. And the cheaper that we're getting here, the more I'm liking some of these potential captain options. I'll just go to Goedert from there, because the Chiefs, weak against slot receivers, they're also weak against the tight end this season. Neil, do you want to go into a little bit about Dallas Goedert in this matchup?
Yeah, I'm pulling up schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game. So over the past 5 weeks, it looks like it is not as great over the past 5 weeks in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game. Actually, wait, I'm reading this chart wrong. I'm realizing. Hang on. So for Kansas City, it is a top 10 matchup over the past 5 weeks in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed per game. Goedert also, I mentioned him already, just the price tag, honestly, where there aren't a lot of like really great, really cheap options. Goedert, what is he? 5,400, 5,800. Getting looks like around 31% ownership. That seems that's in the flex. I think in the flex, that seems like pretty fair ownership. Goedert, not the type of player that I typically love to play in the captain spot, but I think he probably has enough upside here that I'm willing to go there. looking at, just the recent game log for Dallas Goedert in the conference championship game, 30% air yard share, ran 77% of the routes, saw 8 targets in that game. I mean, might be coming on at the right time. So if he's going to be low enough owned, I think you can take some shots on Dallas Goedert. 90% route participation in the divisional game, saw 4 targets in that game. So not quite as elite in terms of the target share, but at least he's out there running routes. Like the pretty clear third best option from the Eagles passing game to me, and getting reasonable ownership. I would say I think 31% in the flex, just given his price tag. I think that's a pretty fair number. He is actually he's getting higher ownership than Devonta Smith in the captain spot. I'm seeing him 8.5% projected ownership, and 7%. So I would rather take those shots on Devonta Smith. I think got a fine play, but not something that I'm going out of my way to be overweight to the field. I think I prefer Smith and Brown in the captain spot, but in the flex, I think he looks pretty strong at around 31% ownership. How about you? How do you feel about Goedert?
I like him as a captain option, but I do think that he's getting too trendy. I think that by the time we get to game time, he could be over 10%, because people are going to realize how cheap he is, and then there's going to be a lot of people talking about him because the Chiefs have been vulnerable versus tight end, giving up 15.6 DraftKings points a game to the position. If this ends up being a lower scoring game, like you and I are thinking, then that's going to put guys like Dallas Goedert on the map for potential captain worthy scores, because we could see muted scores all around, and that's where I like to target some of these tight ends for potential sneaky plays. But like I said, he's not going to be sneaky this week. There's already a lot of people touting him, and I did see he started off under 50 yards as his prop, and now he's looking at like 52 or something like that. So like even the prop market is adjusting to the buzz around him. So while I do like him, I do think that he's going to give us some salary relief if we want to plug in more of the expensive guys. I do think that we need to be cautious with our expectations on like his ownership potential.
Yeah, exactly. Just it's all going to come down to where the ownership ends up as we get close to the game time. As of right now, looks okay, but I think could come up also closer to game time.
Yeah. So let's look at a couple more of these Chiefs guys. We got Travis Kelce. I don't have ownership in front of me, but I'm guessing that he's probably one of the higher owned guys. Neil.
Yep, I'm seeing around 9% in the first place I look. Another place, let's see. Around 9% around the industry. Travis Kelce at captain. So, higher than either of the Eagles. Pass catchers lower than the quarterbacks, lower than Saquon Barkley. He's one of those guys. He's a little bit unpredictable, which we've already seen just looking at the playoffs for Travis Kelce. Like he came in the first game and it was like, okay, yeah, of course, Travis Kelce. The divisional round, we saw 8 targets in the divisional round. Seemed like, that's what we can expect in the playoffs from Travis Kelce. He's going to be Mahomes' big target. He was last year in the playoffs. He came on from, pretty limited usage to in the playoffs, getting a ton. But we've already seen that again, divisional round, 8 targets. In the most recent game, just 4 targets in the conference championship round, still ran 82.4% of the routes. I think he's not the player that he once was. I think he's obviously like pretty clearly lost a step, but it doesn't really matter if he does get 8-10 targets. I think he's going to look pretty good. So it's not a player that I don't think I want to be above weight to 9%. I think 9% feels about right for Travis Kelce. Maybe I'll change my mind on that closer to game time. But as of right now, I think he's expensive enough that I don't really feel the need to get overweight to that number. I don't know. What do you think?
I think with Nakobe Dean being out, there could be some vulnerability against tight ends by the Eagles defense. And, if they're not able to pass at or behind the line of scrimmage as well as they normally do, and then they're kind of blocked from passing deep, the, bend but don't break type of environment could lead to, Fangio and the defense could decide, we don't care if Travis Kelce's catching all these, passes between the 20s, and that could lead to a bunch of PPR points for him. So I do think that he has the potential to put up like a captain worthy score. We're looking at a coming off of a bye week, basically with having the week off, he's old, and you'll give some time to recover a little bit, like he did after the regular season, having a couple weeks off, and then he came out of the gates in the playoffs, just scoring, looking like old Travis Kelce. But I do think that that's that's in the cards for him to look good coming off of a bye week. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up talking retirement after this game as well.
Yeah, I was listening to some quote earlier. Just this week, he said, I think I've got a lot of football left in me, but I have a lot of other options also. So he was not committing to playing football beyond this year. So yeah, it could be the final hurrah where he gets 15 targets in a game. Definitely well within the range of outcomes for Travis Kelce.
Yeah. So I do like that he's, if he comes in under 10%, I think that's a good discount on him, for the potential upside, especially if we don't think that, maybe these quarterbacks are necessarily going to be putting up captain worthy scores at their price tags. So I think Kelce, makes a decent option to keep in your player pool as a captain option for sure.
Yeah.
So if we got Xavier Worthy next, he's kind of a same situation as Kelce. He's the slot receiver basically, and so we could see some of those intermediate routes. But the problem is the Cooper DeJean situation. He's been playing really well this season. He came into the slot, and Philadelphia was basically a sieve in the slot, and then he came in and plugged up that hole. And now he's got Xavier Worthy, and the Eagles have been giving up 14.3 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers. But what are your thoughts here on Worthy's situation?
Yeah, Worthy could be with Hollywood Brown back, maybe seeing a little bit. I'm just looking through the fantasy points data. They seem to have it different, but so Brown in the conference championship game, 35% from the slot, Worthy at 43%. So Worthy has been running a little bit more from the slot than Brown, at least in recent games. Actually, the game before that, 61% for Worthy. So just trying to make sense of the wide receiver cornerback matchup report at Fantasy Points, where they actually have Worthy being covered by Slay and Hollywood being covered by Cooper DeJean. But I think you're right. It maybe is a little bit more likely because they also have Hollywood as the slot receiver. Maybe it's a little bit more likely that Worthy sees a little bit more. Regardless, it's not projected to be a shadow situation. So maybe the specific matchup, not something that we need to worry about the shadow exactly. The bigger thing for Worthy is just, man, the usage has gone up significantly in recent weeks. It kind of, early in the year, he was pretty all over the place with his usage. Seems like Kansas City really focused on making sure he gets the ball every game. Saw 6 targets in the divisional round, 7 targets in the conference championship round. I don't have the runs in front of me. I think he gets a couple of designed runs typically in most games also. So they're kind of manufacturing ways to get the ball in his hands pretty easily, take advantage of that speed, and it's gonna be tough to stop him when he does have the ball in his hands. So I still think with Worthy, always a wide range of outcomes. 9% projected ownership for Worthy seems honestly pretty fair to me. I have no issue with 9%. I don't think it's a number again that I want to be really getting way ahead of because he is fairly expensive. He's not like a real paid on option, but I think 9% seems fair at captain. 37% in the flex. My guess is that overall I'll be a little bit light on Worthy. I'll come in. So he's coming in 40, 46%, 45%. I forget what the numbers were, but I think I'll probably be a little bit light on Worthy overall. Just hope that he doesn't score a touchdown because he's expensive enough that he could have 6 catches and still not pay off that price tag. Like he probably needs to score to pay off, or at least get the 100-yard bonus to pay off that $8,000 price tag. So I do think I'll be a little bit light on Worthy. But he's certainly dangerous. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think that if I'm going to have an anchor chief, it'll probably be Worthy or Kelce. Like as my one of my chiefs, and then going with a cheaper option as a second one. but I do think that I probably want Worthy or Kelce at least in most lineups because I do think that the volume is going to flow through those guys, and like you mentioned, his usage is way up. And I do think that those guys are going to have the best matchups on top of it, like as far as the defense allowing them to get passes in between the 20s. When it get to the red zone, that's a different story. But I do think that we're looking for PPR points in this game, especially with the potential lower scoring outcome in this one. But one thing that I'm interested in this game, and let me know your thoughts on it, is the running back situation is kind of left for dead for the Chiefs, and I think that the ownership is following that that mindset, and so we're looking at like Kareem Hunt. I think I saw it like 25% in the flex. But what are your thoughts here on Kareem Hunt and Isiah Pacheco?
Yeah, it really seems like it is just Kareem Hunt's backfield at this point. I mean, the conference championship, 57% of snaps for Kareem Hunt, 29% for Isiah Pacheco, 17 carries for Hunt. Saw a target on 35% route participation. Everything seems to be pointing toward Hunt is really of the two of those. I guess I'm just using that those two as the main running backs here. Hunt seems like the clear number one option there at 6,400. I'm seeing 24% flex ownership. So that seems like a pretty reasonable number to me given his price tag. I'd like to be overweight on Kareem Hunt at 24%. Just he'll get enough opportunities. He has not been efficient at all, has not been great with his opportunities. Also doesn't see a ton of targets, which obviously you don't love that. You'd love to get 3 or 4 just to raise the floor to bring 3 or 4 catches. But if he's 17 carries, doesn't need to do all that much, can score a touchdown, put up 50 yards at 6,400. He's going to look pretty good. So yeah, I think Kareem Hunt looks like a player that I want to be above weight to the field on. In the captain spot in particular, 3% projected ownership seems fair to me. Like I think I kind of like that number. I think I'll want to get to at least 3%. I don't know that I get to a ton more than that. But he could score 2 touchdowns. There's no reason Kareem Hunt can't just, if you believe all of the Chiefs getting all the flags, like who says the Chiefs don't get 2 pass interference calls in the end zone and then Kareem Hunt just gets a couple easy touchdowns. So I think that's a pretty fair number. I think I'd be more inclined to go overweight to 3% than underweight to it, but he's not going to be like one of my biggest stands on the slate. How about you?
So the thing with the Chiefs run game is, like I said, like the situation with passing at or behind the line of scrimmage, that's pretty much been the Chiefs run game that they've relied on to be their run game. You kind of you combine that, like the Eagles defense ability to defend that, along with Nakobe Dean being hurt. And Nakobe Dean, I believe, had like a 83 PFF score against defending the run, basically. So I think that there's going to be opportunity for the Chiefs in this one to utilize the run game. And I think that Kareem Hunt, there's been a lot of talk about like how the teammates were happy to get Kareem Hunt to a Super Bowl and everything like that. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get his opportunities in this one. Pacheco, could be in play as well. Like either one of those guys could be in play in this game, and they're going to be super low ownership for starting running backs or running backs on the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, who might be switching up their game plans against this Eagles defense, who has the ability to defend what the Chiefs do really well. So I would not be surprised to see the running backs get a little bit more action than people are expecting in this one.
Yeah, I will say, and I know you had some recent success and almost some recent mega success in a Chiefs Showdown slate. Chiefs Showdown slates to me are the most frustrating because they just they change things up kind of out of nowhere. So like all indications are like it's Kareem Hunt's backfield, Isiah Pacheco, kind of an afterthought. But to your point, like if suddenly it's Isiah Pacheco getting 14 carries and Kareem Hunt getting 6, nobody's going to be that shocked because the Chiefs just do stuff like that all the time. I think Pacheco in play. Like I don't think I'll get to a ton of Pacheco just because he is 5,200, and I think the most likely scenario is he isn't going to see a huge increase in opportunities. I mean, the conference championship, just 5 carries for Pacheco, 2 targets on 6 routes run. I think if I'm going to a non-Hunt running back, I'd be more inclined actually to go to Samaje Perine. I think that there are more game scripts where he gets more involved. The bigger thing being he's 1,200. If you flip the prices, I'd rather have Pacheco than Samaje Perine. But at 1,200 and getting lower ownership, I do think Perine is one of those guys who, like, for years now, it seems like we'll just have random spike games for the Chiefs. They'll get a random receiving touchdown. They'll bring him in for the 3rd and long plays. So I actually like, if I'm going to, I really like Kareem Hunt. But I think if I'm deciding between Pacheco and Perine, I'm more likely to get to more of Perine than Pacheco. And in the conference championship, I mean, 18 snaps for Pacheco, which is more than Perine, but still 10 snaps for Perine. Actually ran 8 routes, so a couple more routes run than Pacheco, and he's just significantly cheaper. So just you're kind of betting on an outlier with either of them. I'd rather take the cheaper guy and hope for the outlier there.
Yeah, and I felt like throughout that entire game with Perine against Buffalo, they were basically setting up a situational play where they would be able to do that game-winning throw to Perine, where he just kind of leaked out and nobody was even thinking about him. He was an afterthought. This goes to what Neil's talking about like the Chiefs being frustrating with trying to figure out what they're going to do. They like to bait teams and set things up. Like the last couple Super Bowls that they've played, the most random guys have scored touchdowns. Like last year, MVS and I believe it was Juju. MVS and McCole Hardman. Yeah, they hadn't been involved at all like throughout the season, and each of those dudes scored touchdowns in the Super Bowl. The year prior to that, there was like Kadarius Toney and I can't remember the other. There was another player in that game against the Eagles, but the Chiefs will go to these random guys in the Super Bowl, and I think you got to be aware of that when you're building your lineups and make sure that you're getting exposure to all these Chiefs receivers. If you're going to be entering a bunch of lineups, don't sleep on any of these receivers, because this is what the Chiefs do. They set it up. They make you think that they're going to their guys that they've been relying on, and then all of a sudden you're going to see like a Watson touchdown or something like that, or a Perine touchdown. And that's part of the reason why I started Perine against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is the game that Neil was talking about. Had Perine in there. He was 2% owned. He scored a touchdown at the end of the 3rd quarter, put me up. I was winning $118K, held that until the very last play of overtime. And Kareem Hunt ended up scoring a touchdown and knocking me down from $118K down to $400. And it was brutal, but it was exactly what you expect out of the Chiefs. Just having these random guys like have these games that could put you in a really good position to separate yourself from the field at very low ownership.
That's right. You got to embrace the chaos. When you know there's going to be chaos in the game, you just have to kind of embrace it, lean into it, play you some Samaje Perine in those games.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on Samaje Perine. I do think that he could be that random guy that gets the touchdown in this one, especially when they get into the red zone, and they've been struggling in the red zone. And I think against Tampa Bay, they were actually in the red zone when they threw that pass to Samaje Perine. So I wouldn't be surprised with it working in that game, and then it working last week against the Bills. The Bills not expecting anything out of Perine. He gets that game-winning catch. Don't be surprised to see Perine have enough points to get himself into an optimal lineup this week.
Yeah, for sure.
So Pacheco, the other guy, the other running back, another guy that could randomly pop off. Obviously, Pacheco was their starting running back. He got hurt early in the season, and he has not done anything for the most part this season. But Pacheco, another guy to keep on the radar. We don't need to go too deep into him. He is expensive though. I would say at 5,200, that's pretty expensive for Pacheco relative to what he's done, but that could also hold his ownership in check.
Yeah, for sure.
If I'm going at that price though, I like Butker a lot more, based on what we talked about earlier about the Fangio defense being able to hold the Chiefs in the red zone. But what are your thoughts here on Butker?
Yeah, I think both kickers. I mean, we can. I never spend that much time on kickers. Maybe it's a leak for me that I don't really, because it feels so random. Like it's so unpredictable with the kickers. But typically kickers are going to go a little bit under owned. We're seeing Butker coming in around 16%, Elliott around 15%. If those are the numbers, like, yeah, I'd take the over. I'd want to be overweight to both if they do come in around those numbers. I think both look like great options here. I'll be overweight, and I won't spend a ton of time trying to guess which one is going to be the better option. I'll just take an overweight stance to both of them and kind of hope for the best there. I don't know if you have a better process for kickers. I'm usually overweight to them unless they come in like over 20%, and then maybe I'll be underweight. But yeah, usually I shoot for 15 to 20% on the kickers and then just kind of hope for the best.
Yeah, like when I'm doing, hand building, or I'm only doing like 3 or 4 lineups, like I'll typically target kickers if it's an offense that I know is going to be able to move the ball against a defense that I know will be able to stop teams in the red zone. That's where I typically look for, targeting kickers, and that's where I kind of see some upside for Butker, especially in this game. But like Neil said, like it could go any way with these kickers. We could see Butker have a decent game. We could have, Elliott having a decent game, but I think both those guys are in play, especially for salary relief. DeAndre Hopkins, like I like him too. I think we can talk a bit about some ancillary receivers. What do you think on these ancillary receivers? Guys like Hopkins, Watson. I believe that's those are the last 2 of those ancillary receivers, apart from Hollywood Brown. But Hollywood Brown's pretty much taken. Juju Smith-Schuster has kind of taken on that role as the wide receiver 3 in this offense. What are your thoughts on Schuster, Hopkins, and Watson there?
Yeah, I'm just looking at their numbers from the conference championship. So we had Marquise Brown ran 68% of the routes, saw 5 targets in the conference championship game. So pretty strong numbers for Hollywood. Juju Smith-Schuster actually up to 56% route participation in the conference championship, saw 3 targets. So he looks pretty strong. DeAndre Hopkins down to just 10 routes run, 29% route participation in that game, and 2 targets. I don't remember exactly what the deal is with Hopkins, but it's something along the lines of he needs to play under 50% of the snaps on average in his games with the Chiefs. And if he played more than 60%, then the a pick that they traded away would move from a 5th rounder to a 4th rounder. It was something along those lines. So they've been kind of limiting him as a result, or we thought maybe as a result. But he only played. Again, only ran 10 routes in the conference championship. So I don't know if maybe if they could unleash him now more. It could just be an age thing. Like maybe he just doesn't look quite as good. I don't really know what to make of DeAndre Hopkins. I think Marquise Brown looks awesome. Hollywood coming in at so he's only 5,400, so around the same price as Dallas Goedert, coming in at lower ownership, 27% ownership on Hollywood. In the flex, in the captain spot, Hollywood coming in at 4% ownership. And you might disagree with me on this. I know you liked Dallas Goedert quite a bit. I think I prefer Hollywood to Dallas Goedert. Like those 2 are the closest in terms of price, just because we saw it. So it's been not quite as big in the playoffs. 5 targets in the last game, not bad. The game prior to that was a huge letdown, 71% route participation, just 2 targets for Hollywood in the divisional round, but he only played 2 games in the regular season. He moved up in week 16. Hollywood Brown just only ran 15 routes, but saw 8 targets on those 15 routes. And then in the week 17, he ran 20 routes, saw 7 targets. So really strong, target share when he is actually on the field. So kind of felt like, okay, if he's on the field a little bit more, that's going to, the targets are going to, at least stay the same, maybe even increase, but then drop down to 2. I don't know. I think that like he is probably more likely than Goedert to see like 10 targets in a game. I think maybe that's not true. Goedert pretty close. I think that they're not all that different, but maybe a little bit more explosive than Goedert. I think those are the two that are like the closest comparison. How do you feel if you're deciding between Goedert and Hollywood Brown? Do you have a preference? Because I'm waffling a little bit as I say this. I'm like, well, Goedert, he can do stuff after the catch. So I don't want to write him off completely. How do you feel about it?
I think it's an ownership play. You look for, because Hollywood's got the upside, right? He's got a lot more explosive upside. I think Dallas Goedert probably has the safer. Well, I don't even want to say the safer floor in this one, because Hollywood, they've had a couple more weeks to integrate him into the offense. He's a couple weeks healthier. So I mean, they could design their entire game plan around Hollywood Brown, and we wouldn't have a clue until it's the first drive and he's getting like 3 targets. Right. But like I do like Hollywood as well. Like, and I think honestly I would kind of split my exposure between those guys, just kind of see who fits better in whatever game scripts I'm building with my lineups.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. Both obviously look like great plays. Juju Smith-Schuster like really stands out here. He's 2,000. See, I'm seeing 14% ownership here, 15%. So yeah, he's projected for 15%. I mean, just a slam dunk to me. Like somebody I'm going to be double the field, maybe more than double the field on Juju Smith-Schuster if these ownership numbers hold, because like you said, he's pretty much taken over as that wide receiver 3, 56% route participation in the conference championship. Let's see, the divisional round, just 29%. So kind of promising to see that like basically double week over week in the playoffs. Like we've said though, the Chiefs, there is a lot of chaos here that could obviously go away pretty quickly. But I mean, if he ran 56% of routes again, and saw, I mean, he only saw 3 targets, so not a ton, but with Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball, that's also not nothing. I think Juju at his price tag looks like a really strong play here, and somebody that I'm going to be significantly overweight to the field on. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think Smith-Schuster, he's had big moments in some of these big games for the Chiefs, it feels like. And then last week, he ended up getting all that usage, and like we're saying, he's basically the wide receiver 3 in this offense right now. And I do think that he probably runs a lot of those routes that are going to be effective against the Eagles, just trying to move the ball. And he could get a decent amount of work to especially pay off a $2,000 price tag for sure, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that one looks like kind of a no-brainer. Just like looking at the numbers, like how is he only getting this much ownership? That seems like pretty obviously should be getting more, particularly given just that this is a slate where we really don't have a ton of value. Like he just stands out as like this is actually really strong value. So looks great to me.
Yeah. And one thing that I like about this game is that we know with the Eagles where the ball is going. Like the Eagles don't stray away from their core guys. It's Goedert, it's AJ Brown, it's Barkley, and it's Devonta Smith, right? Like they're not going to be passing to Johnny Wilson or Calcaterra, any of those guys.
Don Dotson,
yeah, exactly. We don't have to worry about those cheap guys with the Eagles. We can stick with their core guys. The Chiefs is where we can get like our variation. And the good thing about those Chiefs, those cheap Chiefs being like low owned and everything, it's going to give us opportunities to fill in value where we need it, and get a variety. We can swap them out. They can be our rotating piece, and we can get different with all these various different Chiefs. If we want to go with the running game of the Chiefs, we have that option for cheap. Like it's just like we have a lot more wiggle room, I think, with these Chiefs guys that we can plug in, and any one of these Chiefs guys could have a decent game and set us up for set us up to differentiate ourselves with our lineups.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
right, Neil,
very different teams. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say so let's build a couple lineups here. I think like what I usually like to do is usually like to build, maybe a chalkier lineup, maybe one where we think that the field might head, or one that has like a good chance of a good chance of coming in first place, but that you'll probably be chopping with like a few hundred people or something like that. But just to give people an option. Who do you like as your chalky captain?
Saquon is fairly chalky. So if I'm going to a chalkier captain option, probably Saquon.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think we have Saquon in the captain. They're getting less tush pushes, and Barkley's. And that mentality burned me last week because they both ended up having decent games. But
Right.
usually like it's Barkley or it's Hurts for the most part that's going to have the big game. But I think we can consider Hurts, but let's look at maybe like a cheaper option before we go with Hurts. Mahomes in this particular situation, do you like Mahomes putting him with Barkley?
I mean, I wouldn't rule out Mahomes with
Yeah.
Barkley in the captain spot, but he also would not be the next player into this build for me. I think that, we should, I like to start with like, okay, who do I want in this lineup? So
Yeah.
rather than just like, we'll see if Mahomes fits after to me, the way I build, I would wait on Mahomes because I don't feel that great about Mahomes. Like in general, not a player that I'm like going out of my way to force in my lineups. Whereas like we've talked about some players that we like on this slate a little bit. So I think for me, I'd rather go other places first, and then like we could come back to Mahomes if we have the salary.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So we talked about how we both like Juju. Do you
Yeah,
want to hit our value first and maybe plug him in?
I think that makes sense. Yeah, just going
Okay.
right for the value. I think that is a good idea.
All right, let's get Juju in there. We both like Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, but do you have a preference? Do you want to lean away on one of those guys, or do you like a Chiefs guy next?
Yeah, I don't. So I think we should go with one or the other of Devonta Smith or AJ Brown. Probably not both. I'd probably go Smith in this one. I think like AJ Brown has the better like captain atomic upside, whereas Devonta Smith has better odds of just paying off his price tag and looking pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then we probably need at least one more value, like sort of value option. We could go both of like Hollywood and Goddard and then get to a pay up option or choose one of them. But probably one of those two would be the next into my lineup. So you
Let's
like
put them
Goddard.
both in there. Yeah.
Yeah. What would it look like in that case?
Oh my
So
God, we're
now we have
left
enough
with
to,
Hurts and Mahomes. Like it's builds
yeah,
itself pretty much. I mean, it just kind of goes to show with this Super Bowl when they're trying to attract more more customers. It's going to be kind of easy
right.
to build this week, I think.
Yeah, it is. It is fairly easy. I mean, the pricing is not like that soft either. It's just like,
Yeah,
but yeah, with this lineup, I mean, also because we threw Smith Schuster in there
yeah,
makes it easier.
yeah.
Um, yeah, this looks good. We could, I mean, you can also in this one like sub out Goddard for or Brown for Kareem Hunt if you wanted to, and still fit one of those quarterbacks. I think that would be still fairly, and Kareem Hunt actually not getting crazy high ownership. Um,
Yeah. I think if I did that, I'd probably sub out Goddard rather than Brown, since we got Barkley and Smith in there already.
that's true.
Uh,
Me too. Me too. I
yeah,
like
so
that.
that's a good idea. Let's get Hunt in there. Leaves us with 10-8, and so it still leaves us with Hurts and Mahomes as options, or if you want to go with Kelce or Worthy or Brown or any of those guys. It could be a rotational situation. You could rotate out that last spot if you like this as kind of a core.
Yeah.
Neil and I both kind of like all these guys. I probably lean more Hunt than Neil does. But what are your overall thoughts, Neil? And is there a guy that you would rather swap out? I'm guessing Kareem Hunt, right?
No, I like Kareem Hunt quite a bit. No,
Okay.
I'm with you. I'm with you on Hunt. Yeah, no, I'm a fan there. Yeah, I think this looks like a really, really strong start to a lot of. You can throw Mahomes in here. I think
Mm.
Mahomes makes sense with both Hollywood and Juju in this lineup.
Yeah.
Obviously, could make sense. Yeah, there's nobody in this lineup that I'm looking at, and I'm like, I need to get that guy out. Like there's a clear upgrade. I think this looks like a really, really strong start.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Barkley lineups. So if you're watching, by the way, hit that like button, get us to 30 likes so we can put out the favorite picks in the comment section when we get closer to lock. But yeah, I mean, this lineup kind of builds itself. I wouldn't be surprised, if a lineup like this did really well. But at the same time, don't be surprised if it's also a very popular type of build. Maybe not with Smith-Schuster in there, but that's kind of the guy that Neil and I would lean on to be the random guy to get a touchdown in a game like this. If you wanted to swap out Smith-Schuster with Watson or P. Ryan, I don't hate that either as the random guy. So I mean, that could be your rotational piece if you wanted to stick with a Mahomes or a Hurts, and then kind of swap out Smith-Schuster for one of these other cheap options. That certainly makes sense as well. But Neil, let's go with one of our our more fun captains here. Like, who do you like as a cheap option and captain? I believe you mentioned Brown, but like who would you go with for a more sneakier captain?
Yeah, I think just going to Brown, then we can play Hurts in this one. I think that would be a fun way to build. Yeah, you could also, like, if you wanted to go really cheap, you could go Devonta Smith, I think also. But I like the idea of a Brown and Hurts lineup.
Okay, so let's get Brown and Hurts in there. Let's say that Spags is having success against Barkley. We got Hurts and Brown. Probably, let's see, maybe Goedert would fit in a lineup like this as a second guy for Hurts to kind of justify Hurts in the lineup. Or maybe Hurts is getting like the tush push at the 1 yard line. But which direction would you go for your next player in here?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably, because we're at 6,300 left per player. I always like to figure out, okay, what are my cheap value, and then who can I afford at the top. So I usually would go down to either P Ryan or Juju Smith-Schuster again would probably be my next stop. Favorite of that group, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
So like probably Juju Smith-Schuster in most cases. Yeah. And then you can again go back to choose between Goedert and Hollywood. This could be a Mahomes lineup potentially again with one of them.
Yeah, let's go with Hollywood. So,
yeah, so then if we went,
yeah,
I mean, this one we could fit Devonta Smith in there if we wanted to.
Yeah, I do like that. We could go Smith. We could leave money on the table and go with Hunt, Goedert. I do believe that the 4-2 builds of Kansas City to Philadelphia are going to be better than 4-2 Chiefs this week. And I mean, honestly, you kind of go either way, but I do like how this one shapes up with a 4 Chiefs potentially, or if we add Hunt, or if we add Smith. It kind of takes a little bit away from Brown as a potential captain option, but you definitely put Smith in there and just kind of hope that both those guys go off.
Yeah, I think it's viable enough, but I agree with you. Like, typically, if I have AJ Brown as the captain, I don't want to have more than one other pass catcher from the Eagles. I think Devonta Smith would be fine to have in there. But I also like your idea of playing Hunt in this one, leaving 1,400 on the table. Like, I'm always in large field stuff. I think leaving some salary on the table, avoiding some of the most dupes lineups, is usually a good idea.
Yeah. All right, so let's do one more. We talked about how we liked Hollywood. Let's try to do a Hollywood one. And what did we say his ownership was? Was it like it was under 10%? It was about like 7 or 8%?
Like
did you
4. Let me see.
Oh,
In the
4.
captain
Even
spot,
better.
yeah, in the captain spot, I'm seeing, let's see. Yeah, 5 in one place. Just kind of looking around some of the industry projections. Yeah, 4 to 5% is what I'm seeing.
Okay, yeah, that's perfect. So we got Hollywood Brown. We probably want Mahomes in this lineup too. Now, if I had Hollywood Brown with Mahomes, I don't think that Hollywood Brown alone is going to be enough to carry Mahomes. I think that's more of a PPR based play. But if I got Mahomes in there, I probably want to put in like a Kelce or a Worthy, because I got the shoot for the moon guy, but I want to have like more of a stable receiver with him as well. And would you have a preference of Kelce or Worthy?
Let's try Kelce. I think Kelce is generally going to be my preference of the two of them. All right, so then we have 7,600 left. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could go.
Do you feel like that this maybe Barkley? Like, do you think Barkley for the Eagles?
Yeah. Definitely. No issue going to Barkley there.
Okay.
Now 54.50 left. So no, I mean, we talked about playing kickers, and I, whenever I do shows and I build, I almost never put kickers in the lineups, even though I'm like, I always like think they're a good idea, but then just like it's never fun, which is why they always end up lower owned than they should, because everybody is like, yeah, I don't want to put a kicker in there. There's no fun in that. But probably a good idea if we did want to put in one of the kickers and then either Hollywood or Goedert.
Yeah, I think, maybe in this build, since we got Barkley, but he's not in the captain, maybe Barkley's having success running, but he's not getting the touchdown. So maybe Elliott's coming in that situation. He's kicking field goals instead of touchdowns. That's why we have no like big other big Eagles in there. That leaves us with the 6,100. So yeah, that puts us in that spot with Goedert as an option, which makes a lot of sense, I think, in this build. Pacheco potentially could double kicker it with Butker as well.
This is also one where we have a lot of chalk in this lineup, other than 4% Hollywood at captain. So this might be one where I might say, okay, let's try a DeAndre Hopkins. Like I think it's possible that he's been completely replaced as a wide receiver 3, but he also might just, like, maybe in the Super Bowl they'll go back to their veteran star receiver. So I think like Hopkins, like leaving 1,700 on the table in this lineup, not the worst idea. I think could work there. Trying to think what else we could go to here.
I think in a build like this, we got Mahomes to Kelce and Brown. This could be. I like the idea of leaving money on the table in this one. We're about 300 short of Hunt. Let's see, if we wanted to, we could take out Kelce and put in Worthy, and that gets us to Hunt, and we still leave money on the table.
Yep, that one, that's another build that works for sure.
Yeah, so plenty of options this week. I think Neil and I have gone over a bunch of these lower owned captains that we think have the potential to pop off in this one. But Neil, do you want to build one more? Or do you want to just kind of direct in this one?
Sure. Yeah, I can. Let me see. What have we not done? I gotta think about what would be a type of lineup that we haven't done yet that could be fun. I mean, we haven't done. One thing that I kind of like to try to do sometimes is I think people understack with Jalen Hurts at captain. So I think Jalen Hurts. Let's try just immediately Jalen Hurts with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith in the flex. Yep.
I like that.
Yeah, and then from there, like this is like, and I think Cody Main from ETR put out a thread recently and mentioned that people typically understack with Hurts at captain, which I thought was interesting, and something that I've always kind of suspected with the rushing quarterbacks. People don't like to play it for they're doing their damage through the air. Now you can go to, we could go to like Hunt. We keep going back to Hunt, so maybe let's try something different. Let's try paying up for a Kansas City guy. Maybe we go to Juju and Samaje Perine, and I wonder what that would leave us left.
Let's see, Juju
and I'm not like,
pretty much
that leaves us more than enough money left. Okay, so we don't need to go quite that off the wall. So we could take out Juju and go to Hollywood Brown instead,
like that.
And now we still have enough left over to play Mahomes, Kelce. We're leaving salary on the table either way. So I think that this is kind of a nice start to a build.
Yeah, I like that too.
And you could also, I mean, the same lineup, you could have Juju in there instead of P Ryan, and still the same options are available in that case. So I think that makes some sense. Yeah, I think this is a nice start to a build.
So that's a good one. I want to try one more. Did we do a Smith captain yet? Devonta
No,
Smith?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Let's do a Smith captain, because I think a Devonta Smith captain, we're looking at, PPR points there. So I think we can put Hurts and we can put Barkley in a
Yep.
lineup like that. And then if we're left with 5,500, we both like Brown. And this is one where I don't hate putting Goedert in there. That's going to
Sure.
give us four Eagles, and leaves us with options like Pacheco and Butker. I don't mind Butker in this one. If we're saying that like Hollywood Brown is how they're moving the ball, and it would make complete sense if it was Hollywood Brown that was moving the ball. They're not scoring touchdowns, so Mahomes doesn't get in this lineup. But then we got Butker cleaning up in the field goal department. Maybe he gets 4 or 5 field goals in this one, and maybe Hollywood Brown gets one long touchdown. And then we're justified having Hurts, passing downfield to Goedert and Smith racking up those PPR points. Maybe Smith gets a touchdown or two in this one. And, I think a lineup like this all comes together and makes a lot of sense and gives us a 4-2 build.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks great.
Nice. All right, Neil. So why don't you tell the audience, where they can find your content and, what you have coming up this week for Super Bowl week.
Yeah, I'm the Flannelverse YouTube channel. You can also find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I am there. Of course, you can find the link to the Flannelverse YouTube via my Twitter account. I don't actually know if I'm going to do anything other than I'll probably do a pre-lock show. I've done it for every main showdown slate of the season, so I'll probably do a live stream. I've been doing it about an hour and a half prior to games locking, just when inactives come out. I usually start them. I might start a little bit earlier this Sunday because I'm going to obviously go watch Super Bowl with friends. So I might start it a little bit earlier than usual, but I'll be doing a live stream prior to the Super Bowl on Sunday. I don't know if I'll do anything else on my channel between now and then for the Super Bowl. I've started doing some NBA DFS content on my channel, so I'll probably do some of that. But yeah, for the Super Bowl, I think all I have coming up is a live stream prior to the game on Sunday is all I have planned. So you can find me Flannelverse YouTube channel or at PlayerQ DFS on the socials.
Good stuff. Yeah, make sure to go subscribe to Neil if you like the Showdown content. Obviously, if you're watching this show, or if you've been watching this show throughout the season, you're probably big on Showdown. So Neil is another perfect guy to listen to, for Showdown advice and for ways to think outside the box. And Neil does a lot of multi-entry, so you get a different perspective there as well, which is always great for this kind of stuff. And Neil, thanks for joining me, man. I definitely liked having you on the show this week. And, enjoy the Super Bowl, guys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Get me to 1,800. I think I was getting close to that point. And make sure to hit the like button. 30 likes will trigger the plays in the comment section as we get closer to the Super Bowl. And stay tuned, because I got a couple other shows coming this week. I got to have a couple other special guests this week, so you're going to want to make sure to check out the analysis. And I will see you guys later.